I want to apologize I didn't get this up yesterday. I have been sick. It's not COVID, but I have been sick. I've been pushing myself to do these every day, sometimes more than one a day, just to get it out there, especially with what's going on in the world. You never know. I don't know how long I have to get all of this out at the end of the day. At this point, it really is priority for me to do so. Just going to address, before I continue, where I left off, describing exactly what happened with Euteneuer and what he did to me specifically that night when I wanted to go back to my apartment, and he simply would not bring me back to my apartment and insisted on doing these quote-unquote exorcism prayers in the Maddox funeral parking lot, and then eventually drove me up into a cemetery. So when I was speaking of somebody in the building at Human Life International, when it got towards the last several months and everything was really bad with the abuse, and again, at the time I was being told this is just the way that it is, this is how, it's the exorcism, it's the demons making you think this and feel like this and see this, and, you know, so, it was really bad. And during the short breaks I'd get to, like, run to the restroom if I was cognitive or something like that, and I would walk out of the chapel and go back towards where the restrooms were, I knew there was someone else in the building. I knew it. I would sense it. Sometimes I think I would hear footsteps, but here's the thing. I knew it was a human being. I knew there was a person in this building. I grew up in a house, and every last one of my siblings can attest for this, so people can't just be like, oh, just one person's hallucinating things. No. Okay, you don't this whole phenomena of group hallucinations is BS. It's demonic, okay? Technically, it's not a hallucination, I guess, because hallucinating is seeing something that isn't there. But the demonic stuff, you are seeing something that's there, even if you're not seeing all of it or its true form. So it's technically not a hallucination. But I knew it was a person because I grew up in these houses in this family where it was a regular thing, you know? You would hear footsteps running up and down the stairs when nobody was up. You know, you would see a cup shoved off the counter in front of you when nobody was in the kitchen. You know, that type of stuff happened all the time. You know, the TV turning itself off and on, the lights off and on. That's the stuff that everybody acts so afraid of. And I get it, I do, on a level at least, even though that was what was the normal, you know, for me and my siblings in the house we grew up in. But not house, we were always moving. The longest place we lived anywhere was 5 years in Streeter, after we moved outside of Chicago when I was going to that private Catholic school, being molested by multiple people, but the next door neighbor there. Always moving because either the rent wasn't being paid or the damage to each house that we were in from the violence and abuse that was going on in there. So we were always moving. We were never in one place. So I've moved more times than the years I've been alive at this point. And I knew it wasn't a spiritual thing. I knew there was somebody in there. It creeped me out. But I never knew who it was until after all of this. So fast forwarding to when it was reported, both bishops knew what was going on. Neither would remove him. They left him there for 2 months. HLI got fed up, blackmailed Barbarito, and then Barbarito pulled him for a couple weeks before he was seen again, driving around Front Royal, and then started coming up regularly to meet with different people, quote-unquote unofficially, after they told me that he was going to be locked up and unable to do this to anybody else again. This was a complete lie. If an entire diocesan bishop is willing to lie, use hush money to lie to make victims think that they're protecting this from happening to somebody else, or that it's going to make some positive difference, you know, then you know it's bad. As I was saying, in Front Royal, even though there was at least a woman in Indiana and in Florida, even though I don't think that's it, there was 2 of us in Front Royal, and the first woman that he began sucking in with these exorcisms to eventually begin molesting and raping her, it had been going on a year. He'd been doing that to her for about a year when he started with me. This woman knew about me. I want to clarify, regardless of the details here, she is not the person at fault, not legally or morally. He convinced her that she was demonically possessed and needed his help, the same he did to me. But the dynamic was different. It was entirely different. Both his fault, both sick and twisted, both criminal, but we are not the same people, her and I, and it was not the same dynamic. And he sucked her into this really sick, trauma-bonded romance. On Saturdays, go to the Basilica in D.C., and they'd go on dates. They went to the Wolf Trap all the time together. He dressed casually, of course. He didn't dress as a priest when he was out with her, other than getting her a job there the wrong way and paying her more than he should have been paying her. I think he was constantly giving her money. She eventually started to suspect that he was doing this, quote unquote, with somebody else. Just so you know, she admitted this to me directly, and then I believe it's also in the reports. That's when the dots finally connected, when she told me. I knew, and then my mind went back to, yeah, I knew there was somebody in the building. She started hiding in the building upstairs. She said she would look through, like, the St. Michael's window sometimes. She wanted to find out, first of all, if he was doing this with somebody else. But she did realize he was, and she saw him with me. Then she wanted to watch exactly what he was doing with me, quote unquote. With me, really what he was doing to me. This woman herself admitted watching him molest me on the floor with me unconscious in the HLI chapel. She admitted that after the fact. I didn't even know this woman existed. I knew nothing of her. Would fly her to Iowa, buy plane tickets all over the place all the time, but he'd fly her to this complete whack job, quote unquote, psychiatrist in Iowa. This is how messed up this is an actual somebody with a license somewhere. This is a serious issue. Weird, freaky stuff, guys. Like, he'd fly her out there and they'd be there for a week or two, and he'd go into these sessions, and it was a male therapist, and he would instruct them to do, like, sexual things with each other. In front of him, in the office, in the psychologist's office. I don't know where he found this man or how this even happens, but it is probably one of the strangest things I've ever heard by the time I heard it, and after living the life I've lived, that's saying a lot. I'm not going to reveal her identity. I didn't mean that in the last video when I said I would say, you know, let you guys know who was in the building. I meant that I'll tell you that it was the woman who made the reports that was in a different sort of relationship with him, being abused nonetheless under the guise of exorcism. Remained anonymous all this time. When she made the report, she remained anonymous. When she filed the suit, she remained anonymous. I'm not doing this anonymously. I'm taking this forward fully 100% knowing who I am and why I'm doing this. I can't see doing this any other way. I wouldn't do this anonymously. I also respect that she wants to do it anonymously, and what she did was anonymous, and that's her choice. I think when it comes to the victim in the situation, they shouldn't have to do anything. The predator, the priest, the criminal should always be identified. When it comes to the victim, they shouldn't have to do a damn thing that they don't want to do or that they're not comfortable doing. Period. I'm going to rewind back that night. After I got him to leave the Maddox Funeral parking lot, he told me he wouldn't take me back to my apartment still, and told me he was just going to take me back to HLI. Because again, it wasn't immediately after the bishop made whatever call to say, oh, well, you know, this woman you're praying with, just stop praying with them, but then they did nothing for 2 months. He didn't immediately change the location. It was probably about a week in where he started changing the location to the Pax Christi Sisters in Front Royal at the time. So once we got up into the cemetery, and I opened my eyes and realized, well, no, actually, I opened my eyes before we got all the way to the top of the hill. When I felt him turn right is when I opened my eyes. Asked where we were. Like I said, are we in a cemetery? And he says, yeah, why does that bother you? And I said, yes, it does. Yes, it does bother me. Can we please leave? Can you please take me back to my apartment? Again, he refused. And just kept saying the same thing over and over again. I cannot leave you like this. I will not leave you like this. You just need to trust me. I felt him climb on top of me, and then the memory goes completely black. Nothing. Climbed on top of me, and then I woke up laying on my right side on my living room couch, staring at the wall in front of me behind the television set. I have no memory after him climbing on top of me in the cemetery. I have no memory of him driving me back to my apartment. I have no memory of him walking me up the stairs, even though my sister told me later that he had walked me up the stairs and that she had gotten me to lay on the couch and then went to bed. I had no memory of anything between him refusing to take me home in the cemetery, climbing on top of me, and then just black. Waking up on my living room couch. Something was different about that night other than it just being in the cemetery and him driving me to the Maddox funeral parking lot, me trying to get out of it by saying I need to use the restroom, him walking me into St. John's to use the restroom, people seeing us, ending up walking me back to a CRV Honda, asking him to go back to the apartment. He won't take me, insists on going back to HLI, pulls him to a cemetery instead, ask him why we're in the freaking cemetery. Why does that bother you? Yes, it bothers me. Please take me home. No, I can't take you home. You just need to trust me. We need to continue this now. Climbs on top of me, blackout, wake up on the couch in my apartment. It must have been more extreme than anything he had done before, because I never felt that way like I did when I woke up on the couch, and can't remember a time where I just laid and stared at a wall all day, unable to move or speak. I was awake and my eyes were open, but I couldn't move. I didn't move. I didn't talk. I didn't get up. I just laid there all day in pain, a very specific kind of pain. It must have been more extreme than anything he had done before, because I never felt that way like I did when I woke up on the couch, and I can't remember a time where I just laid and stared at a wall all day, unable to move or speak. Eventually that evening I got up, and that's it for now. I gotta stop for now, guys. I'll continue more tomorrow.